Year 2 of the G League Ignite is underway, and with that comes Dyson Daniels, an Australian point guard who does it on both ends of the floor, although in an unorthodox way. So how will his skill set translate to the NBA? This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. Dyson Daniels turned down college interest from Arkansas or Colorado to join the G League Ignite. So far, the Australian guard has had an up-and-down season while developing, but he has shown some tantalizing flashes. With his vision, size, and defense, Daniels seems tailor-made for today's NBA. At 6'6" with a 6'9" wingspan while being one of the youngest players in the draft, Daniels has a good chance of being the first international name off the draft board. With Dyson Daniels, let's start with his vision, and let's actually start outside of the G League. First, I want to show what Daniels looks like with a more spaced out floor. That's not always something he's had with the Ignite team, but he has had in other environments. With better spacing, Daniels is capable of generating threes in the pick and roll. His size, which I honestly think might be a bit more than 6'6", lets him see over the top of defenses. Then, his length allows him to get creative with his passing angles and delivery. Daniels is a legit guard and should be treated as such, rather than being seen as a ball-handling wing, for instance. Getting into his G League tape, Daniels has not been used in the pick and roll as much as I would like, but he still made some nice reads in the half court. I will get into this more later, but it is very important for Daniels to pitch in with passes and connective plays when the game slows down. Daniels can hit moving pieces in tight pockets and more often than not, make sensible decisions. An important question for today's prospects in the NBA is how they do in transition. The pace of the game is faster than ever before, and we have seen how fast decision makers can thrive in the open court. For example, Ben Simmons with his literal speed, or LaMelo Ball with his quick outlet passes. The good news here is that Dyson Daniels has shown some encouraging flashes when the game opens up. He can run the floor hard, sort of like a big, and then find other teammates with touch passes that show his quick recognition. Or Daniels can push the ball himself and create good looks for his team. Daniels is ripping down 4 defensive rebounds per game for the Ignite team, which is good because he is definitely a guy that can grab and go. Otherwise, and as I will break down later, Daniels can get stops himself before getting out in transition. Are there improvement areas for Daniels' passing? Sure. He can get better at exploiting mismatches, and he has yet to really show that pick and roll vision with the Ignite team. But I think it's also worth considering that the spacing he works with is rough and that he's shown his passing in other ways. Dissecting the rest of Daniels' offensive game, I think it is evident that you want to get him moving downhill right now. The Australian guard is not necessarily the most explosive or quick twitch athlete, but he knows how to use his length to come up with creative finishes at the basket. On the other hand, Daniels does not have an insanely creative handle, more on that later, but it is functional. I think he can still get better at using longer strides to attack the basket, but his driving game reminds me a bit of Josh Giddey. Daniels is not a top athlete, but his long handle, size, and toughness lets him get to his spots. From there, he's crafty enough to finish, or when given a runway, he can get up for a dunk or two. But the thing to really highlight for Daniels with his scoring is the floater. He has incredibly soft touch on this floater that has become his signature move of sorts. Daniels makes about half of these shots, which is incredibly encouraging to see from someone so young. This floater is no fluke either. It has shown up in many different contexts already. It goes back to getting Daniels moving towards the rim, but he is just really good at knowing how to get into this shot. He can spin into it or contort himself before floating the ball up. It also goes back to what I mentioned about his explosiveness. There's more to come on this, but Daniels does not have to force himself to the rim with this floater. He can get into it so suddenly that it freezes the big, and even if the big is quick enough to react, Daniels gets it up with such a nice arc and touch that it is tough to stop. When I'm putting together these videos, I like to organize plays into folders, and the folder with Daniels' floater in it just kept growing and growing. To be clear, Daniels is not some otherworldly scorer. He's only scoring about 11 points per game on 45% from the field. I'm not necessarily too worried about Daniels' percentage at this point of his career, but those points will need to eventually go up if he's to become more than, for example, a third option. But when you look at his tools, the team that he's playing for, and who he's playing against, I think it's more important to focus on the things you can build off of, such as his advanced floater game. One of the things Daniels must overcome, though, is his lack of burst. Daniels is not a bad athlete in most areas, but he does not possess that explosiveness that can sometimes set prospects apart. It comes down to whether Daniels can overcome that by being a positive in other areas. So far in the G League, we've seen at times that Daniels can struggle to attack the basket. When he is trying to get all the way there, Daniels does not always turn the corner. His defenders don't always have to work that hard either to contain him. Another thing is that Daniels is not the type of player to explode for a dunk in traffic. When he is bumping to get to the rack, Daniels cannot go straight up. He has to fade away, making his shots even tougher. This is also likely why Daniels barely gets to the stripe. He shoots under 2 free throws per 40 minutes, something which should not be the case for a 6'6" ball handler. Something that ties into this idea is Daniels' handle. Like I said earlier, I think it is functional, however, it is also very basic. Daniels does not have too much shake or creativity. He has sort of a high posture too, which is not what you tend to see from guards. Because Daniels plays with high hips, it can be tricky when smaller guards get underneath him and try to bother his handle. I'm fully on board with Daniels being a guard, but I think ball handling is something that he will have to expand. Another improvement area for Daniels is his jump shot. Daniels is not a bad or unwilling shooter right now, but he can definitely grow. I don't think his mechanics are overly flawed, besides his release time being a little slow or inconsistent, but his touch is just not that soft. Daniels is shooting under 30% from 3 for the season, although in a decent volume of 3.5 trays per game. His free throw numbers are much better, 87%, but on a tiny sample size. Still, that shows to me that the potential to improve does exist. Daniels will have to make these off-ball threes in the future. He is not much of a pull-up shooter and largely avoids the mid-range except for with his floaters. The problem is, we are yet to see Daniels have a good track record of shooting the ball anywhere. Even when he impressed at the FIBA Under-19 World Cup, he shot just 30% from 3. Again, the volume of shots at 6 threes a night was encouraging, but the percentages need to go up. I will say though, compared to where Josh Giddey was, at least at this point of his process last year, Daniels has shown more as a shooter already. If he can keep making his spot up or even some catch and shoot threes, then Daniels has definite value in the half court. Ultimately, that's what it goes down to. He's not an outstanding shooter or athlete, but can he find other ways to make himself valuable? Right now, his vision and floater game hold up, but adding a reliable shot would help in a big way. Like that, Daniels could be used in a variety of roles and next to score-first type of guards that will let him concentrate on playmaking. And then, if Daniels can pitch in with offensive rebounding or gets better at working mismatches down low, that is actually a pretty complete offensive player. And I think we have to be careful to not diminish Daniels' offensive ceiling. Right now, Dyson Daniels is arguably better on defense than down the other end of the floor. I'm a big fan of the Australian guard on this side of the basketball. Daniels is smart, physical, and disruptive. As you will see over the next few minutes, Daniels excels at using his length to do a variety of things. The first one is combining his 6'9" wingspan with his anticipation. Daniels averages about 2 steals per game for the G League Ignite, and it's easy to see why. Daniels has quick, active hands. Even when it seems like he is not in a play, Daniels is so fast to react and disrupt with his length. Simply put, I think that Daniels' reaction time is really worth noting. He is really good at finding openings to poke his hand in, but the one thing he is also excellent at recognizing is opportunities to jump the passing lanes. If you're loose or careless with a pass around him, Daniels can fly in and get the steal. In turn, that creates offensive opportunities for the Ignite team. His level of activity and engagement on defense is unusual for an 18-year-old. Daniels genuinely competes on this end of the floor and should fit into a variety of systems. Daniels can gamble and play more aggressively, but he also knows how to get down in a stance in the half court and slide, often with players smaller than him. Daniels knows how to flip his hips and stay in front of plays. He makes multiple efforts to get over screens, stay parallel to his attacker, and then contest. I think Daniels' motor shows up in this capacity because he is genuinely always trying to stay attached or in front and get his hand up. I appreciate that about him. Watch here as Daniels guards the small on an island and eventually forces the turnover. I buy into Daniels as someone who can switch 1 through 3, and maybe even some 4s as he continues to get stronger and understands the game even better. His multi-positional versatility on defense is very handy and allows teams maximum flexibility while still keeping a solid level of feel on the floor. Daniels and teams around the NBA should feel very positive about his defensive future in the league. One area we have seen some flashes in is rim protection. Again, Daniels is quick to react to whatever is happening on the floor. That means that he will be in the right place to come over from the weak side, make the correct rotation, and then make the right play as well. Daniels has 10 blocks in 14 games, which is not bad at all for a guard. And even when he does not get the block per se, he can still often be in position to contest and bother the opponent's shot without fouling. Daniels' rim protection and just overall defensive feel really shows up in transition. These are the types of plays that don't tend to really show up for most prospects, but I noticed Daniels getting stop after stop in these types of situations where his team was facing a numerical disadvantage. Daniels can really defend 2-on-1 or 3-on-2 situations, which actually exemplifies multiple things. Again, it's the reaction time, but also the length and the motor. It would be easy to give up on these plays, but Daniels is relentless on D, always making multiple efforts. Daniels' defense in the pick and roll is also worth pointing out. We've seen him defend this in a variety of ways, be it guarding the ball handler, helping, etc. Daniels' defensive understanding is genuinely advanced for his level and age, and I think he is one of the best defensive prospects in the 2022 draft. Daniels projects as a switchable defender with a high motor who can make plays on D, and then that translates into chances on offense. That is very, very valuable in the NBA. In terms of things to improve, Daniels can still get lost off the ball, but that is not really uncommon. He's also gotten gassed a few times, but that has been less of an issue as the season has gone on. His high hips can also pose questions against smaller guards, but overall, I think Daniels has dealt well with those challenges, and the flashes that we have seen should really encourage a positive defensive outlook on the Australian guard. With Dyson Daniels, let's start on the offensive side of the basketball, which right now I think where he shines the most is with his passing. Daniels, like I said in the video, he still has to show a little bit more of that pick and roll playmaking that, well, he showed with the Australian youth teams and in other contexts, but has so far not really appeared all too much for the G League Ignite. Still, I really do like Daniels as a connective passer. I think he can lead the break, he can push the ball, he can obviously do some pick and roll. He can play, I believe, eventually out of short rolls as well if teams use him as a screener. So he's a very versatile playmaker, and I think that will translate to the NBA right off the bat. I think the Josh Giddey comparison is a little bit lazy, just because, they are both Australian, just because of their backgrounds. But in terms of how they operate, I do think that there are some similarities. And then, obviously, the shot is going to be a big thing for Daniels. Right now, like I said in the video, the thing that I like the most is the shot volume, especially from deep. The fact that he's shooting so many threes a game, and even with the Australian youth team, he shot about 6 threes a game at the FIBA Under-19 World Cup. That to me shows that not only is he a willing and confident shooter, but his coaching staffs clearly see something in him to give him that green light. And then down the other end of the floor, I really like Daniels as a versatile defensive playmaker. He not only creates plays on offense, but also down the other end of the floor. I think that right now you can use him on the point of attack, and he can really, swallow up point guards with his length, mobility, and instincts. But he should be able to switch 1 through 3 right off the bat. I think eventually he'll be able to switch onto some 4s. Let's say like his teammate Marjon Beauchamp. I think that Daniels eventually will be able to switch onto guys like him. And then besides that, he's already very good at using his length. He's got great reaction timing. He can really jump the passing lanes, get steals, get things going down the other end of the floor. I think that he'll be able to take post-ups eventually. He can rotate from the weak side, help protect the rim a little bit, even when he doesn't get the blocks necessarily. But overall, he's just a very, very active defender, very engaged, very willing, and I really like his motor and capacity to make multiple efforts over the course of the same play. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of Dyson Daniels, and if you enjoy the channel, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.